Ne aflăm astăzi aici împreună pentru a institui o nouă dată în calendarul academic al Universității noastre, zilele Facultății de Științe. Ne bucurăm că acest prilej a adus în Universitatea noastră, lângă noi și lângă dumneavoastră, dragi studenți, pe mesagerul unei națiuni ale cărei valori le împărtășim cu toții. O națiune care și-a dezvoltat parcursul sub semnul libertății, sub semnul creativității, o națiune care a crezut și crede în continuare că omul poate să-și depășească capacitățile, să-și depășească limitele. Dragi studenți, Universitatea din Craiova, una dintre cele mai importante universități din România, dar și din peisajul european, vă oferă, vă pune la dispoziție o infrastructură educațională, de cercetare și socială de excepție. Mai mult decât atât, în ultima perioadă am încercat, și spun eu că am și reușit, să dezvoltăm parteneriate și colaborări sub ceea ce generic îmi place să spun, o adevărată cultură a parteneriatului și dialogului. Alături de noi sunt astăzi peste 100 de instituții și companii care vă oferă stagii de practică personalizate, internship-uri, toate acestea ajutându-vă pe dumneavoastră să vă creșteți capacitățile practice, abilitățile practice, astfel încât, la ieșirea de pe băncile facultății, să puteți semna mult răbnitul contract de angajare. Îmi place să amintesc și voi aminti cu fiecare ocazie câteva dintre vorbele frumoase pe care președintele For România, John Oldman, le-a spus la deschiderea anului universitar. Citez: studenții Universității din Craiova nu sunt numai foarte bine pregătiți, sunt inventivi și creativi. Domnule ambasador, aveți în fața dumneavoastră reprezentanții studenților Universității din Craiova. Vă invit la un dialog deschis, sub semnul libertății, sub semnul cunoașterii. Vă mulțumesc.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to spend some time with you this morning. My name is Hans Klemm. I am the Ambassador of the United States of America to Romania. This is my first opportunity to visit the University of Craiova, although I've had an opportunity some 6 weeks ago to meet some of the students here, and as the rector mentioned, I've had several chances to visit Craiova in regard to the Ford Motor Company, which is the largest U.S. investor not only in Craiova but Romania. And I can confirm what the rector said. Ford has a very positive history in operating in Craiova, enjoys a very good relationship with the university, offers internships and scholarship programs for students here, and has plans to not only remain in Craiova, but also to expand operations in the future. and hopefully a concrete announcement regarding those plans will be coming very shortly. These are the days of science at the university. What I would like to do this morning, I hope this is what you are prepared for, is to talk a little bit about elections and politics. There is some overlap, of course, in the field of political science, but my intention this morning, and again, I hope this is agreeable, is to talk about the election for a president, which is to occur next Tuesday in the United States, and then also perhaps touch a little bit upon the national parliamentary elections that Romania will face in about 6 weeks in early December. 5 weeks, I guess. It's coming up very soon. Let me first start by appealing to you as citizens of Romania that on December 11th that you vote. This is very, very important. Romania enjoys the fruits of being part of a democracy, as does the United States, but a democracy only flourishes, it really depends on active participation of its citizens in governance. And the most direct means of you to contribute to good governance in Romania, in the creation of a competent government with integrity, is for you to vote. And so please exercise that privilege, please exercise that right, please vote on December 11th. In the United States, we are coming to the end of a very long period of campaigning for the office of the President of the United States. And my intention is to speak for perhaps 15-20 minutes to outline some of the major themes of the U.S. presidential election over the past year and a half, and then perhaps draw some comparisons with major themes that I see here in the electoral landscape of Romania, but then open it up to you. And I very much look forward to hearing your questions and your comments. So please think of them as we sit here today, this morning. I very much look forward to hearing from you directly. So the campaign for the presidency of the United States. It's hard to imagine almost, but it actually started close to 2 years ago. In April of 2015, so a year and a half ago, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton announced her candidacy for President of the United States. A couple months later, in July of 2015, again 2015, Donald Trump announced his candidacy for the presidency of the United States. And in that time since then, since early 2015, these two candidates, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, first campaigned against other, in the case of Ms. Clinton, Democratic challengers, and in the case of Mr. Trump, Republican candidates for the presidency. And after a long primary season, as we call it, in July, Donald Trump was nominated to be the Republican candidate for president, and of course Ms. Clinton was nominated a couple weeks later in early August to be the Democratic candidate for president. In the past 15, 18 months, as the campaign unfolded, there were, I think, some prominent themes. First, foreign policy. Now, normally in U.S. presidential campaigns, and I think this was true this time as well, foreign policy does not play a prominent role. Usually it's some aspect of domestic policy, some challenge that faces America at home that is the center of campaign. And that was true this year. But nevertheless, foreign policy did make the headlines on occasion. One of the candidates questioned, for example, the role of the United States in the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, in NATO. And he questioned specifically whether other members of the NATO alliances were paying their fair share in terms of the alliance's activities and defense and deterrence against aggression. This was a point that the Obama administration actually opposed. The Obama administration is a very strong supporter of NATO, but nevertheless, it was a question asked of the American voter. Similarly, one of the candidates asked whether our alliance with Japan and Korea were balanced, both in terms of the contributions that Japan and Korea respectively were making to our bilateral treaty alliance with those countries, and whether alternatives should be explored. Again, the Obama administration opposed this point, but nevertheless, one of the candidates raised it as a question. Syria, the civil war in Syria, the gruesome, bloody consequences of the civil war in Syria, and how to end the war also was debated. And the candidates took somewhat different positions. I think it's fair to say that Hillary Clinton argued for a more interventionist policy in Syria, where Donald Trump thought that partnership with Russia, for example, could bring a quicker end to the conflict there, and that the focus really should be on the Islamic State and not so much on Syria. And then terrorism and the fight against terrorism was also a theme in the presidential debate, especially at moments just after acts of terrorism occurred in the United States. And that unfortunately happened both last winter and earlier this spring. So foreign policy. Another issue that had some prominence in the campaign was around gender, the role of women in society and the economy. This, of course, should have been no surprise to anyone, given that Hillary Clinton, a woman, was running for president and was the first candidate of a major party, the Democratic Party, to be nominated to be the party's candidate for president. Her success or according to Mr. Trump, her lack of success as Secretary of State was part of this argument. Later in the campaign, the respect of the two candidates for women and how women should be treated in society as well as in the economy also became a topic of focus in the campaign. So foreign policy, gender, race. Race was also a topic, sometimes hidden a bit from direct discussion, but often was a subject of debate. Again, in the United States, the discussions around race have been a part of our democracy from its very beginning. And this is true largely, or at least partially, because the United States Constitution, when it was first agreed in 1787, enshrined slavery as an important element in parts of the American economy. And the United States has been dealing with that legacy, with the legacy of slavery ever since, over the past 2.5 centuries. We fought a very, very bloody civil war 150 years ago over the question of slavery, and the treatment and respect, the integration of African Americans in the American society continues to this day. The question of race in the 2016 campaign often centered around the relationship between African Americans and police, police departments in major American cities, and drew questions about whether the police were unfairly treating African Americans, or, according to at least one of the candidates, around the question of whether law enforcement authorities were given adequate respect and protection in their dealings with the African American community. In addition to African Americans, the demographics of America, of the United States, are rapidly changing. As a result of immigration over the past really 100 years, the Hispanic American population is growing rapidly, as is the Asian American population, immigrants from Vietnam and from Korea in particular. And in just a couple decades, what was once significantly majority white America, Caucasian America, will no longer be so. It's estimated by, I think, 2040 or so, so just really 25 years from now, white Americans will be a minority in the United States. So all of this is very much a part of the conversation that took place during the course of the debates. Corruption was very much a topic of the campaign, particularly in the past several weeks. And this is not so much corruption of the standard variety, if you will. It wasn't so much that candidates were accused of directly stealing from the public treasure of the United States, but rather that there was a system of institutions that protected and allowed other candidates to advance in the United States, essentially patronage networks. Whether this is true or not, I think is very much arguable, but nevertheless, one of the candidates has accused the other candidate of corrupt activity and has predicted that after the election, that candidate could be the subject of criminal investigation. So foreign policy, gender, race, corruption. One of the major topics in the campaign for the United States president was the economy in the United States. The 2008-2009 financial crisis that hit Romania very hard, and Romania is still overcoming the effects of that crisis 5-6 years ago. Also, of course, hit the United States very hard. In fact, most economists believe that it originated in the United States. There's been other changes in the American economy over the past 10-15 years. Economic growth in general has slowed in the United States. Gross domestic output per person, for example, in the period up to 2000 was expanding at an average of 2.2% a year. Since 2000, so over the past 16 years, that average growth of output per person has slipped to less than 1%. So that's more than a 50% decline in average growth rates. And that has hit incomes of Americans, particularly the middle class, very hard. The middle class in the United States generally has seen its income stagnate, if not decrease, over the past 10-15 years. And there's been greater income inequality in the United States over the past 20-30 years. Part of that has to do with education. It is increasingly important in order to succeed in terms of one's career and one's ability to earn a good salary, to have a college degree, to at least have an undergraduate degree, and even more beneficial to have a a master's or postgraduate degree. The still relatively large sector of the American population that do not have a college degree have found their ability to succeed economically very much affected, and have experienced diminishing economic opportunities, and this is having a consequence for American politics as well. The response from the candidates to this have been varied. The Republican candidate has promised to cut taxes and reinvigorate the economy. The Democratic candidate has pledged to increase investments in education and health and in protecting the environment. Interestingly, both candidates, both Mr. Trump and Ms. Clinton, have said they will dramatically increase investments in American infrastructure, in our highways, in our railroads, in our airports, in order to improve economic outcomes in the United States. So foreign policy, gender, race, corruption, the economy, immigration. I think it's actually easy to argue that immigration was either the number one or number two primary focus of the campaign from the very beginning. It's somewhat ironic, I think, that immigration was such a focal point for the campaign, because in the very recent period, the number of immigrants coming to the United States has stabilized, and from some important countries has actually declined. For example, immigration from Mexico has declined to the point where there are actually more Mexican-born people in the United States leaving and returning to Mexico than in the other way around. Nevertheless, Mr. Trump in particular was very successful in raising concerns about immigration, particularly from Mexico. And it was I believe that most analysts will agree that it was a topic that he was able to exploit very successfully in order to build support among the American electorate. There's concern not only regarding immigration from Mexico, but also immigration from Muslim countries, and a question around whether immigrants from Islamic countries could be successfully integrated into the United States. Secretary Clinton strongly argued that Muslim can be integrated into the United States successfully, and President Obama, it's important to note, strongly argued that the United States has a very successful record of integrating not only Mexicans, not only immigrants from other countries, but also those who arrived in America from Muslim-oriented countries. And indeed, Secretary Kerry, my direct boss, recently said that those who immigrated from Muslim countries in the United States now enjoy greater freedom in the United States than in any other country from which they might have come. But again, this question around immigration, I think, strongly is linked to the change in the demographic mixture in the United States that I mentioned earlier, the increasing presence of non-majority Americans and the declining share that white or Caucasian Americans have in the demographics of the United States. And finally, the last theme, if you will, of the United States has been what I would call, and others have called, an aspect of anti-establishment, of a critique, both by Republican candidates as well as by Democratic candidates, that the current establishment, the political establishment, the economic establishment in the United States does not benefit the majority of Americans, that it only benefits a small elite. and that elite, that establishment, is structuring outcomes in America, whether it be societal outcomes, political outcomes, or economic outcomes, only for itself and not for the benefit of all Americans. There's a sense of particularly those white Americans that do not have a college degree, who have found their economic prospects to be worsening in the United States relative to others, a sense of being abandoned by establishment elites, and finding themselves ever more besieged in the American economy. Again, this was not just Donald Trump who said that the current establishment is corrupt and needs to be overhauled, but also Bernie Sanders, a Democratic candidate, also very strongly campaigned on this message, that too much of American wealth is going to only the top 1% of Americans, that more needs to be done to invest in education and environment and the economy to support opportunities for all Americans, and not just the most wealthy Americans. So in my view, and this is a personal view, those were kind of the main focal points of the campaign. Again, foreign policy, gender and the role of women in the economy and society, race relations, always a feature of American politics, corruption, or at least allegations of corruption, the economy. America does have a very varied economic landscape. Of course, you have Silicon Valley, a global center of innovation and entrepreneurship, but then you also have many other areas in America where the economy really has stagnated, failing infrastructure and on. Immigration, again, very often a major focal point of American politics. It certainly was again this year. And then this sense that of almost a rebellion against the establishment by a number of leading candidates on both the left and the right. So how does this, so on Tuesday, all of these decisions will be resolved. At least America will make a decision over who the next president will be. I think regardless of America's choice, the coming years will be very challenging for the president-elect and whoever is inaugurated in January to be the next president. Of course, it's not only the president who's being elected, but a Congress. The entire House of Representatives is up for election on a Tuesday, November 8th, and 1/3 of the United States Senate is also up for election. And the outcome, President, Senate, and House of Representatives will determine the face of American politics, and also the likelihood that America's political leadership will be able to cooperate on the major challenges that the campaign has identified for the benefit of America and the people of the United States. So let me finish with this. I thank you very much for your patience and your attention, and I would very much appreciate hearing your reaction, hearing your comments, and receiving your questions. Thank you.